Buenas tardes, domingo 13 de septiembre, en nueva charla que organiza el Labrador Retriever Club Argentino. En el día de hoy nos acompaña Donahue, el criadero Quail, perdón la traducción, sé que soy malísimo en el inglés, pero sabrán disculpar. Aquí le vamos a dar la bienvenida, gracias a Jennifer que nos acompaña nuevamente con la traducción, y le damos la bienvenida tanto a Tina como a Duke.
Hi, Tina and Duke. So Marcelo has introduced you and apologizes for his pronunciation, but we're very delighted to have you with us and looking forward to hearing from you about all that you want to talk about Labradors. So it's pretty free format. We'd love it if you could start by telling us about how you got started with the breed. And you know, feel free to open any subjects, any advice, any comments that you'd like to talk about, as well as you'll be asked questions from the club and from the people who are watching now.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you want to start?
No, you go ahead.
No, you start.
Well, I guess we got our start a few years after we were married. I had Labradors for many years before Tina and I met and before we got married. And it wasn't, we were living in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and our son was six or seven. And we came about a chocolate lab, much like many other people might come about him. And he ended up having bilateral hip dysplasia at 10 months old. And it was heartbreaking, and it was not a very difficult decision because, well, we were left with a decision either to put him down or get him at least one artificial hip. And so we decided, and this was 20 years ago.
More than
20 years ago when those type of surgeries were kind of new. And so we did that, and he lived for 13 and a half years, and he limped every day. But it was his struggle and watching him go through it that kind of made us really commit to, okay, we love this breed, we love these dogs. What did we not look at the first time, and what are we going to do if we get another dog? And so that began the process of research. And through research, we met people. Now we know how important they were. But when we first began calling people and learning more about the breed and the breed standard and the breed type, I was raised, my family I was raised with Borzois and Border Collies, and we were not breeders. My family, I just come from a family of dog lovers. So I didn't know much about Labradors, but as a college student, I actually had 3 Labradors while I was in college. I rescued all 3 of them, and they were great. And that's kind of where I got started, and I knew my life would have Labradors in it. It wasn't until Tina and I got married and we started putting our life together that we kind of realized, okay, she's as crazy about dogs as I am. And when our first chocolate Labrador came into our lives, his name is Hershey, we just, oh no, we got bit by the bug. And we learned right away that it wasn't just trying to breed and all that. We knew it was a lifestyle, and we got some pretty good advice early. So I guess that's kind of how we got started. Mm-hmm. The research and the phone calls, and back then, 20 years ago, the websites weren't like they are now. Facebook didn't exist. So it was a lot of phone calls, a lot of conversations. Well, I'll tell you, our first real phone calls after researching, we were very lucky to reach Sally Kelly of Kelly Green Labradors, Annie Kogo from Windfall Labradors, who would become our mentor. And I remember, oh Lord, for several years, for hours, talking with Tom Shearer from Bonaventure about pedigrees, just trying to learn what it was that we liked. We knew what we liked, but we were trying to figure out what dogs had what we liked. And that's kind of how we got started before we purchased our first real serious, confirmation quality Labrador.
Okay,
So
give me
that's
2
kinda how
seconds
we got
to
started.
catch everyone up with
Sure.
with all of that. Otherwise,
Yeah.
I'm going to miss half of what you said. And I mean, I just
Yeah.
wanted to say, I mean, phone calls in some ways give you so much more than just reading off a web page. It's so much more interactive. So, I mean, in some ways, it's not that unlucky to have started that far back. It's an advantage, and I think.
True, very true.
Bueno, primero quiero empezar a dar un poco de información sobre la historia de los comienzos de Tina y Duke. En realidad, su historia con los labradores empiezan en serio después de haber casado. Ellos vivían en Fort Lauderdale, en Florida, y Duke había tenido labradores antes. Cuando estaba en la facultad, él tenía 3 labradores que había rescatado, y eso fue parte de su decisión de siempre tener un labrador. La raza era importantísimo para él. Él, de chico, en su familia, era una familia amantes de perros, pero tenían Borzoi y Border Collie, no mucho que ver con labradores, pero familia que realmente amaba los perros. Y cuando ellos tenían su hijo de 6 o 7 años, se encontraron con un cachorrito chocolate que decidieron comprar como mascota, que a los 10 meses manifestó displasia de cadera bilateral. Eso fue un momento muy difícil, donde tenían que tomar la decisión entre sacrificarlo porque era tan grave o hacer una cirugía muy importante. Ellos comentaron que era imposible no pensar en otra cosa que la cirugía. El cachorro ya era gran parte de su familia, y entonces lo hicieron, y el cachorro llegó a vivir 13 años y medio. Cada día de su vida tenía renguea, y tuvo un desafío para mover. Sus problemas de salud resultaron en un compromiso muy fuerte de ellos en investigar, entender y cuidar la parte de sanidad de sus perros. Empezaron entonces a conocer gente en la raza hacía 20 años, cuando Internet no estaba tan desarrollado, no había Facebook, no había tantas maneras. Entonces se encontraron y empezaron a llamar gente, y tuvieron mucha suerte en encontrar buena gente. 2 personas al su comienzo eran Sally Kelly de Kelly Green y Annie Cogo de Windfall Labradors, que pasó a ser su mentor, y también Tom Shearer de Bonaventure. Estas conversaciones le dieron la oportunidad de entender mucho más sobre la raza, y ellos ya sabían qué tipo de labrador le gustaban, pero necesitaban ayuda en encontrar quién tenía líneas parecidas a eso, y esta gente fueron muy importante en sus comienzos. Después de hacer toda esta parte de investigación, es cuando compraron su primer perro de calidad para exposición, pero destacan que fue después de hacer toda esta investigación. Y ellos sabían que tener labradores de la manera que quiere tenerlo, porque Tina, tanto como Duke, ama tener perros, es una decisión sobre su manera de vivir. más allá de solamente tener un perro o criar, es una decisión sobre cómo ellos querían vivir. Would you like to add anything more?
Yeah, I'll talk. I'll talk. I think going back to the beginning with our first dog, and when we found out he had health issues, I think we were so heartbroken that we remember that we thought, well, maybe we could do this. But we thought, we don't want anybody to feel like we did. We felt like we were, stuck with two horrible choices, to have major surgery done on your young dog or to put him down. And so I still remember that conversation with the doctor to this day. And I think that's what really kind of started us into, like Duke had said, to research for breeders who did health clearances and to learn what type of health clearances needed to be done and to understand why they were so important. So at that point, it was really learning the research.
How to do it right.
Right, the why, the how and the why, and what impact it would make in future. And so then we really, as Duke had said, got bit by the idea of us potentially, maybe breeding. So that's when we started off, and we got, our next dog was, we bought a full-blood English lab from a reputable breeder who did all the clearances. And then they were nice enough.
And he lived 15 years with almost no health issues.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
And so that's what really, I think, really led us to where, at least the start of what I would say our journey. It was our start to our journey. And then we got really sucked in by learning more and more.
So
can you hear me?
Yes, I was just going to say, your experience with Hershey certainly marked your first steps into breeding labs. I can hear that, and I can imagine that.
Yes.
And I mean, because when they're healthy, they're certainly healthy. When they live 15 years, it's a pleasure. I mean, usually.
Right, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
So.
Go ahead.
No. So, that's what led us to having, all the phone conversations with breeders, and Duke did a lot of that research and the phone calls to some of these breeders and having these lengthy questions. He's very analytical, and so he knew all the questions to ask and why, and to get into these in-depth conversations, which really helped us kind of give us a solid foundation of understanding the breed a lot better. And then through all those conversations, I think as any young breeder, it's important to know to ask those questions and to not be shy about asking those questions. And then hopefully finding the mentors that want to help with, providing you the information. So
yeah,
I think that's
a lot of phone calls, and we got a lot of no's or I'm too busy. Rebecca.
Oh, I think that I think it's going to tie in with another question that always comes out, is what would you suggest to people starting out? And that's a lot of what you're saying now. So let me just go back into Spanish for a bit. Bueno, Sally habló también sobre sus comienzos y el impacto enorme que tuvo, los problemas de displasia que tuvo Hershey, su primer perro, y como eso realmente les hizo pensar capaz que podemos hacerlo mejor, en el sentido de no quisimos que los nuevos, las familias que compran sus cachorros tienen ese dolor, ese enorme decisiones que tuvieron que tomar de hacer una cirugía importante a un cachorro muy joven todavía. Y destacan que ellos investigaron, que Duke pasó mucho tiempo llamando a gente, y eso entra a la pregunta que siempre hacemos a los creadores, ¿qué consejo pueden dar a alguien que empieza en eso? Y su gran consejo es de investigar, hablar. Ellos llaman a mucha gente, hay que llamar y preguntar. Y sí, puede ser que algunas personas van a decir, no puedo hablar ahora, no puedo tener tiempo, pero hay que seguir y encontrar lo que quieren compartir, su conocimiento y lo que pueden tomar el tiempo de contestar. Cuando habían hecho todo este tipo de investigación, encontrando creadores que hicieran los controles de salud, cuáles y por qué, era parte de lo que tenían que aprender, y decidieron que capaz que iban a empezar en el camino de criar, compraron un labrador de estilo inglés de un criador importante, y ese perro vivió 15 años casi sin problemas de salud, así que se sentían que estaban en el buen camino. Así que repitan, hay que preguntar, no hay que ser tímido, hay que seguir preguntando para poder tener un base fuerte de conocimiento para empezar a criar.
Ahí estamos. ¿Eso es todo con la presentación? ¿Así empiezo con las preguntas o tienen alguna cosa más que agregar?
Tina, do you have anything more you'd like to add now, or would you like to hear some of the questions?
Yeah, let's hear some of the questions.
Empezamos con la pregunta, sí.
Bueno, Víctor Fabini pregunta, buenas tardes, Tina y Duke. Mi pregunta va enfocada hacia la salud. Quisiera preguntarle si perdonan un reproductor con Prague Carrier y cadera Fair por tener un fenotipo que le llena el ojo.
So there's a question from Victor Favini from Argentina, and his question is to do with health checks and controls, and basically he's asking how far you can accept a dog that's either a carrier or not perfect. He said, would you consider a dog that carries PRA to use for breeding purposes, and would you accept a dog with fair hips? I think it's a pretty, it's wider than those two specific questions. It's more about how much flexibility can you give in health checks and controls.
You want to answer?
Sure. Well, something you mentioned the other day. Well, I tell you, with our own dogs, we have a long-term plan. When we decide to keep a dog, we don't just consider him for the short term or until he's 2 years old and passes health clearances and hips and elbows and things like that. We actually have kind of a 5-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
And what is like with our boy Joey, Joey, when he had his hips and elbows done, at that time, we took him to our regular vet. We didn't know the qualified good vets to take him for his hips and elbow surgery or for his hips and elbow x-rays. And so Joey was given a fair result. But living with Joey, watching Joey move, we thought to ourselves, this is what we like to look at. This is the type of dog we want to breed. So we thought, we're going to keep him and we're going to clean up his bloodline. And so to answer the question, health clearances for me are only part of it. Because if the dog has the features and the traits that you know you want in your bloodline, it may take time, it may take patience, but we would never give up a dog that we really liked just because of clearances. If we really believed in that dog, we would try and find a way to clean up the clearances that weren't as good as they could be. Is that kind of what you think?
Yeah. And do you need to translate, or can I add to that?
You can add to that.
Okay. So along with what Duke said is, I think we need to emphasize that yes, clearances are very important. When you have non-passing clearances, that's definitely could be detrimental to keeping that particular dog in your line. However, to what Duke had said, it is important because where the Labrador is going, you can't, if you only breed based on a completely clear dog, you narrow the margin of dogs available to breed to.
You reduce the gene pool.
And then you reduce your opportunity to maintain the type that we need to keep.
That's true.
You
So
throw out the baby
having
with
a
the bathwater.
carrier, yes.
There's best way to say it. Right.
Yes.
If you see what you like and the potential is there, it's worth being patient. It's worked out for us to be patient. It certainly has.
So to answer the specific question is dogs that are carriers or fair hips, you can clean that up.
Yeah.
Absolutely. As long as you're breeding to something that's clear on the opposite end, you know, with that particular gene.
That's actually one of the things that it goes in hand with what you said. It's combinations, finding the combinations that work to help clean up and you know, really get a stable, consistent bloodline.
So clearances are part of the information and part of the puzzle, but not the whole thing. Okay.
Right.
Bueno,
Exactly.
con su propio perro, ellos tienen un plan de 5 años, siempre cuando hay un perro que está adentro de su criadero, no es que esperen hasta que tienen 2 años y si no le gustan los resultados lo tiran. Ellos tuvieron a su perro Joey y los llevaron a su veterinario local antes de empezar a encontrar a los veterinarios especializados en todo eso, y descubrieron que, bueno, sus codos y sus caderas eran fair, así que son caderas aptos para criar, pero de nivel más bajo, digamos, de los aptos. Y lo que dicen pero le gustan mucho a su tipicidad, su conformación, entonces tomaron la decisión de limpiar este problema, si quieres llamarlo así, con su crianza, digamos, con quien lo combinaba, limpiando las líneas de sangre. Saben cómo es él, pero dicen que es más que posible mejorar lo que tenés y no hay que tirar todo lo bueno buscando solamente perros libres de todo. Digamos, eso hace que la pileta genética se reduce mucho, las variaciones, las opciones de buen perros desaparecen y no están de acuerdo. Entonces ellos dan el ejemplo de su propio perro, con lo cual justamente tomaron la decisión de cómo combinarlo para mejorar sus caderas y sus codos para su progenie. Obviamente no lo pueden cambiar para él. Y que es muy importante usar esta información, pero no tirar buen perro que le gustan y sacarlo de la línea solamente por los resultados eso. Okay.
Ok. Elizabeth Arseno. Hoy quiero conocer qué opinas acerca de las sobreangulaciones que estamos viendo últimamente.
No aclara si es adelante ni atrás ni nada.
No, es eso.
Para
mí es de adelante. Para mí es de atrás, digo, pero bueno.
There's a question that's come in. I was just asking if there was any more clarification. That is, can you comment on the overangulated dogs that we're seeing at the moment? Now, I mean, first of all, you have to say whether you think you're seeing dogs with overangulation, and we think that they're probably talking about rear angulation, but over to you. What? You're muted.
Yes.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure which one wanted to say, because yes, we have, oh, the internet connection.
It's okay. Keep talking.
Is it okay?
Mm.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes, we have noticed some overangulation happening, and Tina mentioned I'm somewhat analytical, and probably a lot analytical, and I actually have noticed not only a change in angulation, but specifically to the lower leg and to the hock. And it's my personal opinion, and also movement is one of my favorite things to look at when I'm evaluating a Labrador. I'm movement first, and I look at structure later. So when it comes to movement, I am seeing a lot of movement changes that seem to be coming from the rear carriage of the Labradors. And the thing I consistently see, a little bit of length in the upper leg, but mostly length in the lower leg and length in the hock. I'm seeing a lot more of it.
Along with which is causing overangulation.
Well, yes, which is causing the overangulation, in my opinion. What do you think?
Yes.
Yeah.
So to add to that, we understand why maybe breeders are trying to focus on the rear angulation, because for so long there's been what we call straight rears. And so when there's a focus on that particular area in a Labrador, sometimes we overdo. So breed an overangulated dog to an overangulated dog in order to get overangulation, or to
Solve the problem.
create better angulation. So I think maybe we've done just a little too much on some end with some of the lines. And so we need to kind of come back a little bit, because the overangulation is affecting the overall movement of the Labrador.
The drive from the rear is changing a little bit. Doesn't seem to be as purposeful and as clean as it used to be. If you agree that there's overangulation, yeah.
Bueno, sí, están viendo bastante sobreangulación. Duke comenta que él es muy analítico, le gusta analizar todo, y él es alguien que mire movimiento primero y estructura después. Se ve un montón de sobreangulación en la parte trasera. Que él dice que en su opinión es que todos los huesos, desde el fémur hasta tener los corvejones, todos los huesos son más largos, y entonces se sobreangula. Antes habían traseros muy rectos, y esos traseros rectos tenían que ser corregidos, y hoy en día lo que se ve son gente cruzando perros con sobreangulación con otros perros que son sobreangulados, para tener mejores angulaciones de lo que existían antes, y se han pasado en esto y sobrecompensado, si uno quiere llamarlo así. Y ahora es importante volver al medio un poco. Todo eso cambia la manera que un labrador empuja cuando mueve.
Okay. Voy con otra pregunta. Bueno, Maxi Novo, y bueno, ya la pregunta, bueno, obviamente el quedo de cadera y codas, ¿en qué color es el que prefieren ellos y cómo preparan sus perros para exposiciones generales o especializadas?
Okay, so the question comes out, but I think we already know the answer. Which color of Labradors do you prefer? And I guess that'd be chocolate, but
you know, surprisingly. Okay, guys.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and then the next part is, how do you prepare your dogs, and do you do it differently if it's for a general show or if it's for a specialty show?
Good question. Well, to answer the first question is, yes, I think our main color that we choose would be chocolate.
But there was a time in this house there were more blacks than chocolates. It didn't last long, but there was a time there were more blacks than chocolates. We've only had one yellow here in our history, and he was special.
But blacks, you know, black, the color black would be our second,
Yeah,
our second color. And as far as preparation, that's a really great question on both ends. As far as preparing for a dog show, if we talk about just a basic all breed show,
there actually is a difference between a specialty prep and an all breed prep.
Yeah. I think with all breed, the main thing is to make sure your dog is fit, the coat is in good condition, and you know, the overall health and well-being of the dog is good. You know, there are no injuries, and everything is in shape. And there's a few little things that we do to keep our dogs in condition for an all breed and a specialty. It's probably just minute little things in difference between the two types of shows. But specifically speaking, I will just kind of pull out, focusing on chocolates. It's much different just showing a chocolate in general, whether you are showing at an all breed show or a specialty. The coat is so key, and the way the color is, the way the overall condition of the coat is. And anyone who's listening who breeds chocolates probably understands what we're saying. Is there's so much into going into the care of a chocolate coat.
And food makes a big difference with the quality of coat for a show dog, for a chocolate. And there are foods out there that they just turn the coat a little bit red.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. So getting back to answering the first, you know, the second part of that one question was, as far as a specialty in general, yes, in general, when we go to a specialty, we do probably add a little bit more weight into our dogs for a specialty, just so they look a little bit more filled out, and maybe not showing as much rib as you might want to show at an all breed show, because we understand, you know, a judge at an all breed show is trained to understand the Labrador from based on the standard, and we understand that the breeder doesn't always agree with what the actual standard may be. And so hence that we want to make sure that our dogs can actually fit in based on a couple things, based on the area we're showing the dog, and based on the judge that is judging the dog, and what types, what their type is that they like to look at.
Sorry, could I just clarify something? Sorry, could I just ask? So when you say the area where you're showing it, you think that there are different, in different areas, there are different types of Labradors they're looking for? Is that what you mean? Sorry, just
here
trying to understand.
Here in the United States, yes, 100% in the United States. And it is, it's region specific. The dogs, we're in Arizona, and the dogs just to the west of us in California are bigger. There's more of them, so there's more shows, and so there's more judges there, and the judges tend to like a slightly bigger dog. To the east of us, the dogs are smaller, and that's to the east of us is more the middle of the United States, and Labradors there tend to be, they're just more, they work more. More of them have, they do dual disciplines, not just conformation, but they hunt, they do obedience, and they tend to be a little bit fitter and a little bit smaller. And so when you go to the East Coast of the United States, those dogs, they're big, they're thick, they're gorgeous, they have big butts, which is different than out here, which sounds strange. So yes, they're different, and in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, the Labradors are a little bit bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So
wow. Okay, just yeah, can you just hold for a second or think about it while I translate what we've got to?
Yeah.
Okay. Primero, volviendo a la pregunta, porque empezamos con una conversación que se empezó a ir, vamos al tema de color. Sí, sin duda, chocolates es lo que tienen en más gran cantidad. Sin embargo, en un momento, por un rato, tuvieron más negro que chocolates. En todos sus años con labradores solamente han tenido un solo amarillo. Dicen que fue muy especial, pero un solo en esos 20 años. Y sí, hablan de las diferencias importantes que hay entre presentar en una exposición de toda la raza comparado a competir en una especializada. Saben que los jueces que juzgan en las exposiciones de todas las razas aprenden mucho de la raza por medio basado en el estándar. Sin embargo, varios criadores de labradores no están tan de acuerdo con cómo se interprete el estándar generalmente y pueden tener otro punto de vista. Así que un perro que va a una exposición de todas las razas lo tienen en condición, en buena condición físico y de su manto, y obviamente bien de salud, y un poquito más liviano que en un especializado. Un especializado lo tienen con un poquito más de peso, donde se ve o no se ve las costillas, y eso es importante. Dicen que los chocolates, obviamente el color del chocolate, el manto del chocolate, el pelaje es clave, y hay varias cosas que se pueden hacer para mejorar el color y la condición, y que hay hasta alimentos que pueden ser problemáticos porque ponen un poco más rojizo el manto. También empezaron a hablar que también hay que prestar atención a dónde en Estados Unidos uno va a presentar, porque hay diferencias importantes según la región de Estados Unidos. Ellos están en Arizona, al oeste se ven perros en California o en la costa Pacífico, que son mucho más grandes, notablemente más grandes. De donde están ellos, un poquito más al este, los perros en general son para usar, para trabajar mucho más. Si ven un labrador un poco más menudo, con menos peso y en mejor condición físico para trabajar, digamos, realmente atletas. Y se compiten con los labradores en las dos cosas, en las exposiciones y en las competencias de trabajo. Entonces quiero un perro ágil, digamos, más liviano, más capaz de mover. Y en el este de Estados Unidos tienen perros más grandes, con más sustancia, y hablan del cuarto trasero bien grande, bien pesado. Así que toman en cuenta esto, y hasta toman en cuenta el juez mismo, que puede venir de uno de estos lugares y estar con el ojo formado por los perros que ve ahí. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Tina and Duke, to what we were talking about?
Yes. Yeah. So as far as getting back to the question again about specialty versus all breed, good example would be, is your dog, your Labrador could be out of coat, and you could still go to an all breed show and show your dog, and your dog still do well, you could still win. But you would not want to take your dog that's out of coat to a specialty because you know that all the breeders will have made sure that any dog they take will be in the best condition possible.
Right.
So there's a little more flexibility when you show at an all breed show versus at a specialty. So when you take your dog to a specialty, you make sure that your dog is looking at its best completely 100%, or you don't take the dog unless you have in your mind that you want to practice or just get the dog some practice, some ring practice. But
and if your dog, if like we have a few of our boys who their coats are so good that even when they've blown their coat, you can still take them to an all breed show and they fit in fine. But they can look 10 to 15 pounds different based on their status of their coat, especially the ones who have really good coats. And a lot of the dogs from colder climates, they look totally different when they blow their coat, because when they're in coat, they just, they're so much.
Another example would be, and I know a lot of breeders have heard this that are listening, is you can take your dog that is in full coat, if they have a thick coat, to an all breed show, and then the judge tells you your dog is fat.
Yeah, all the time.
But if your dog goes in the same coat to a specialty, sometimes the dog may not be enough.
Yeah.
Or your dog could be completely out of coat and you take it to an all breed show and the judge just loves your dog.
Yeah. We see that all the time.
All the time.
Yeah, everywhere. Yes, it happens everywhere. Well, bueno, entonces hablan de una diferencias entre llevar un perro especializado a una exposición de todas las razas. Tiene que ver mucho con el tema, estamos hablando del manto, y que un perro puede haber mudado totalmente su manto y nunca hay que llevarlo a un especializado en esta condición, pero si lo llevas a una exposición de todas las razas, el perro puede zafar, hasta puede ganar. Hay que saber que puedes ser un poco más flexible con ese tema si vas a una exposición de todas las razas. Bueno, ellos dicen que no piensen jamás llevar a un perro que ha mudado su pelaje a un especializado, excepto sabiendo que quieren practicar, que es cómodo para practicar o tener eso en la cabeza. Y hay perros que tienen pelaje tan gordo, tanta cantidad de pelaje, que igual que se mudan su pelo, están en condiciones de presentar, pero al ojo parece que pesan entre 4 y 8 kilos menos de cuando tienen su pelaje normal. Igual que no han bajado de peso corporal, solamente se le han quitado el pelo. Especialmente los perros que viven en condiciones climáticas más frío, que realmente en el invierno tienen un pelaje muy grueso. Dicen que vos puedes ir a una exposición de todas las razas con un perro con su pelaje completo de tiempo frío, y un juez de todas las razas te va a decir que es gordo. O ese mismo perro lo llevas a un especializado y te pueden llegar a decir que no hay suficiente perro ahí para el gusto del juez. Esas cosas pasan. O al revés, llevas un perro con muy poco pelaje a una exposición de todas las razas y el juez se queda enamorado del mismo perro, que cuando tiene el pelaje completo te dicen que es gordo. Así que yo le conté que eso puede pasar en todos lados, no solamente allá. ¿Otras preguntas?
Sí. Pablo Guillomet, hola Duke y Tina, ¿cuáles son las líneas de sangre que marcaron su vida como criadores?
Right, so Pablo Guillomet from Argentina is interested in hearing from you about the lines that have really marked your breeding program.
Okay. Do you want to go? Do you want to? So this is it's a big question, or that's a big question with a long answer. We kind of go back to when we first decided we were really committed to breeding, and we really specifically wanted to breed chocolates. And at that time, we really made the decision after a lot of research to decide that we wanted to try to make, create and breed the best chocolate Labrador possible. And that was being said after learning some of the weaknesses within the chocolate bloodline. There were so many positives, but there were a lot of things that still needed to be improved upon. And that went with a lot of agreement to a lot of the breeders that we had spoken to for so long when we were doing our research and learning and asking questions. And, with that said, that's when we started calling, Duke had started calling and talking to breeders. And then we, had the opportunity to work with Annie Kogo and the Windfall lines. And then we have the Stonecrest Labradors and those bloodlines, and Banner and Epic. There's so many more, but as far as our bloodlines, there's some very specific ones, and I'm going to let Duke answer that question a little bit more specifically. But what we would like to elaborate, because there's so many chocolate bloodlines that have impacted why we are where we are now. But I'm going to let Duke talk about specifically our pedigree.
You want me to go ahead and go?
I'll just summarize this, and then, it's probably a good moment to take a pause. Bueno, vamos a contestar eso en dos partes, porque Tina habló primero y después Duke va a hablar sobre sus líneas en especial. Ellos dicen que esa es una pregunta importante y larga, y cuando ellos se habían comprometido en su cabeza que querían empezar a criar y que iban a criar chocolates, y después de investigar y investigar, ellos querían criar el mejor chocolate posible. Ya habían descubierto mucho de las fallas que existían ya en las líneas de sangre de los chocolates, y eso después de tener muchas conversaciones con Annie Kogo de Windfall Labradors y la gente de Stonecrest Labradors y Banner y Epoch, y hay tanto más, y ahora Duke va a hablar sobre exactamente la línea que ellos han creado hasta ahora. Okay, over to you.
I would say the dog and the breeder that made the first real impact on me was probably, I would say it was Annie Kogo and Windfall, and it had to have been Pipe Major. And
I've seen him, he's lovely.
There was just something about him that I was drawn to and still am. And one of the things that we didn't know it at the time, but one of the things that we were really fortunate in is that a lot of our chocolate bloodlines come from blacks. So our gene pool and the choices we made, we didn't know it then, we know it now. Our breeding choices, because our dogs came from blacks, we had more options. And so early on, we got good advice from Annie Kogo, and she told us, breed your bitch line and build your stud line from your own dogs. And that's what we did. And so when we were looking early on, we were looking for girls. And now we're known for our boys. But our early research, and we believe the strength of our pedigrees started with our girls. And specifically, to answer the question, Bonaventure, we got a girl from Bonaventure Labrador. Her name was Karma. And Karma, we got specifically because she came from the Malorns kennel. And we just love some of the Malorns dogs. And so specifically, her mother's name was Malorne's Nutmeg, and one of my favorite females ever. And so it was through Karma and Bonaventure, and then when she came of age, how we kind of turned the corner is we found a dog that was perfect for her, and that was Nat from High Spire. And while we can't really call Judy Heim our mentor because we met her 10 years after we started, she's become a very good friend. And the breeding between Karma and Nat really kind of, I don't even know the word I'm looking for. That was one of our signature breedings that turned into one of our strongest bloodlines, I guess that's what to say. So I would say that was an important one. And then Davy Crockett is a dog from Stonecrest Labradors, and we just love him. And he is our Margarita's father, our Joey's grandfather. And so he was really the chocolate for me that for the longest time I compared all chocolates against for a long time. But looking back at what drew me to chocolates, I can honestly say it was the chocolate females that we had seen. Even some chocolate females in Europe that are just gorgeous. So, you know, and I forgot, one of the early Preton, the kennel Preton, they had girls, they had Preton Anita, Preton Ballerina. They're just beautiful females. So even though we are mainly chocolates, we were really drawn to the blacks and to the real quality females in the Windfall lines, the Bonaventure lines. What other line that I'm forgetting?
Oh, I mean, there's so many.
Well, the lines that really influence us, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I think those are the two big ones.
Yeah, you know, to add to what Duke said, you know, when we learned from Annie Kogo about the importance of your bitch line, and no matter what you do with breeding, the bitch is generally going to carry 70% of what passes through to the litter. It made such an impact on our direction way back then. This was before some of our signature litters were born, you know, such as Quail Chase, Broadway Joe. That's what led us to a lot of research, even more than what we did when we were first learning. And when we really focused on the bitch line and what bitches through consistent puppies and how they looked alike. And because of that, that's when we knew when a bitch was throwing something consistent, that's what you wanted to add into your bloodline because it would help the consistency. And
I think that our boys as stud dogs, if they're considered consistent, it comes from the consistency of our girls.
Yeah,
I would say.
When our girl Margarita, when we had her, and didn't matter what litter, what boy we bred her to, every puppy, whether it was a bitch or a dog, they all looked alike. We always had a problem telling if it was a bitch or a dog when they were puppies.
They had the same heads, the same bodies, the same attitudes, everything.
And so we learned then, you know, through conversations with Annie and with Tom and Gail Shear, that's what you want, is to have that consistency in your lines, because then you don't need a lot of help to build your line and to get the consistency, the kind of the end result, the output.
Okay, help.
So, you know, that
Just,
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You need to stop.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Bueno, para que no me pierdo, digamos, creo que tengo 3 hojas acá. Duke habla del impacto de uno de los machos que vio de Annie Kogo, que es Windfall Pipe Major, que yo también personalmente quiero agregar que fue un paro que vi a un nacional en Canadá que que he soñado, vale la pena buscar fotos porque realmente él
Mayor,
tuvo
¿cómo
un
se llamaba?
impacto muy grande.
¿Cómo se llamaba?
Windfall Pipe Major.
Sí, sí, sí.
Bueno, y muchas de sus líneas, de las líneas que usan Duke y Tina, de chocolates, tienen origen en líneas de negros. Y eso les han dado una selección mucho más amplia para crear. Digamos, siendo no solamente líneas chocolate, 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 ellos tuvieron más opciones. En sus comienzos, ellos eran conocidos más por sus hembras, y Annie y Kogo le habían dicho que es fundamental crear una línea de hembras. Ella le habían contado que 70% de lo que llegan a los cachorros vienen de las madres. Y para tener su línea de macho de stud, criarlo desde su hembras mismas. Así que forma su línea de hembras y de ahí, de ellas, empieza con su línea de perro de stud. Hoy en día, ellos están más conocidos por su macho que por sus hembras. En un momento fue al revés. Una de la línea que les han impactado, ellos compraron una hembra que se llamaba Karma, que viene de Malorn's Kennel. Ellos habían visto a Malorn's Nutmeg que les encantaron, y en esa cruza con Karma, un perro de High Spark que se llama Ned, ha sido fundamental por sus líneas. Eso le permitía también conocer a Judy Heim, que es uno de los creadores de High Spark, que a pesar de no ser uno de sus mentores originales, ha sido una persona que les han influenciado, ha sido una buena amiga y han tenido muchas conversaciones importantes. La línea también de Bonaventure ha sido muy importante para ellos. Un perro que les impactó muchísimo, que es el perro de una hembra que tienen que se llama Margarita, es un perro de Stonecrest, un chocolate que se llama Davy Crockett. Y ese mismo macho ha sido la marca contra la cual han comparado macho por años, digamos, y años y años. El macho tipo visión ideal en su cabeza, es el padre de su hembra Margarita y abuelo de hijos importantes. Ellos miraron lo que les atrajeron a la cría de chocolate fueron las hembras que han visto. También hembras en chocolates de otro punto del mundo, de también Europa, y también perras como Preton Anita y Preton Ballerina. Ellos llegan en su mente con su excelente macho, con Quail Chase Broadway Joe, y dicen que cuando vos tenés un macho, una hembra que da cachorros totalmente parecidos, siendo con quien se combina, no importa, que eso tiene un gran valor. Y dicen que Margarita, su cachorro, siendo macho y hembra, cuando son chiquitos, son todos iguales. Digamos, no importa el macho con lo cual ha sido cruzado. Y eso es muy importante en un plan de crianza, saber lo que te va a dar tus reproductores.
¿Quieres tomar un poquito de Coca-Cola?
Sí, es un poco temprano para vino acá, así que Coca-Cola.
Mientras tanto, te voy, bueno, acá hay una pregunta de Paula Imbert, bueno, dice, sabemos que tienen preferencia por la crianza en color chocolate y negro. En mi opinión, son parte del proceso de la mejora del tipo y calidad de chocolates en Estados Unidos. ¿Cuáles son los objetivos que se plantean en su plan de crianza futura?
So So we're clear that chocolates and blacks are where you're at, and Paula Imbert is saying wants to ask you a question about where you want to go with your breeding program in the future. Given that, in her opinion, you're one of the best breeding teams in those colors. So what's next for you?
I can comment on a few things if you want to think.
Okay.
Okay. I would say now, I think I have a couple of things. We have some young dogs now, and they're really nice dogs. And I think that I personally want to branch out and make sure that our bloodlines continue to grow, as opposed to I don't know how to say another word for pigeonholed. When you translate pigeonholed, I don't want to be trapped by the success of our boys breeding. I want to make sure that we still have variety, and I want to grow our bloodlines to get even more consistent.
Does that mean more dogs then? Or does that mean
not maybe a few, but different bloodlines with ours as the base, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of having all from the same few dogs, we'd like to have a little bit more diversity. I guess that's the best way for me to put it.
Could I just ask to make sure I'm understanding? So looking at doing some open breeding, some out crosses, and then weaving them back in with the lines that you've got and keeping them within the phenotype that you like?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we also like, because the black gene pool, the black Labrador gene pool is so much bigger and so much more consistent and stable than the chocolate gene pool. I like looking at some of the black Labradors as future options, and then, like you said, coming back to our bloodlines having gone through them. It's difficult because we don't want to undo what we've done, but we know we have to get better. And it's hard because you don't want to give up on consistency and balance, but you have to look towards the future. And again, it wasn't until this conversation that I realized, as we're looking to the future, I'm looking at girls again.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize it until this conversation. I'm back researching girls. I didn't realize that.
So you're talking about the dilemma that all of us who've been breeding for 20 plus years end up having.
Yes.
How to keep going and how to keep healthy and how to keep diversity. Okay, I'll just translate that and then come back.
Okay.
Duke habló ahora. Él habla del hecho que ellos tienen unos perros jóvenes con lo cual están muy contentos, y ellos en este momento creen que tienen que buscar afuera un poco, abrirse para no quedar encasillados con los perros exitosos, pero sin abrir variedad. Creen que es muy importante buscar variedad y no quedar entrapados por sus éxitos. Digamos, entrapados en las líneas estamos hablando, ¿no? Buscan diversidad, buscan salir de sus líneas y después volver a incorporarlo con sus líneas y buscar la mismo fenotipo que han tenido hasta ahora. Para hacer eso, están pensando en buscar en las líneas de los negros, porque tenés mucho más opciones, la variedad de genes es mucho más grande y es muy estable la calidad de los negros. Entonces, si ellos van más allá de solamente chocolates y buscan adentro de los negros, creen que tienen la posibilidad de traer unas líneas estables adentro de su sistema y incorporarlos hasta volver a tener sus líneas. No es fácil, es difícil, pero no hay que quedar encasillado. Y ellos hablan que, o él en particular dicen que hasta que tuvo la conversación que hemos tenido hoy, que no se daba cuenta que realmente él está de nuevo buscando hembras para incorporar en sus líneas, no machos. Él está investigando hembras hoy en día. Okay, Tina. Or Duke, sorry.
Okay. So no, that's okay. So to add to that, Duke and I are always students of the breed. So we're always learning, and we are firm believers that you never have the perfect Labrador, and we can always improve. And so to answer Paula's question is, we feel we have still more room to improve, our chocolate bloodlines. And if you're a breeder in general, breeding chocolates, always has to improve that bloodline, because you can dilute the chocolate breeding to keep breeding chocolate to chocolate. So we always need to open up the database that we're looking in and pedigrees to add more strength, more stronger foundation, better bitch lines to improve our lines. So we're always doing research. And so, to answer Paula's question, we are in the research mode now to see what we can do to improve our bloodlines currently now.
And we're looking at also which boys out there are producing consistently, and which of them might have, daughters that continue that consistency. So, those are the things we're looking at now.
Okay.
The internet and Facebook is now much easier.
Yeah, especially if you're farther away from other options. Distance makes it harder. Are distances big around where you are? I mean, do you have to travel a long way to a show or to other breeders?
Yeah, there's not, well, it's changed in Arizona in the last 10 years. We have more good breeders and more good shows, but we typically have to travel a minimum of 6 hours
To a show.
to a show in any direction. And most of the time we don't travel past 12 hours much.
Okay. Bueno, Tina quiere agregar que ellos siguen siendo estudiantes de la raza. Se cree que siempre hay algo más para aprender, que es imposible tener un labrador perfecto, así que hay que siempre mejorar. Y que si uno se queda solamente criando chocolate con chocolate, se puede empezar a diluir la calidad. Por eso quieren buscar líneas también de negros para tener más combinaciones, más líneas, una fundación mejor atrás de sus líneas, y quieren mejorar sus líneas de hembras, su línea de hembras ahora. Están mirando, observando machos en stud que tienen hijos consistentes de calidad y de apariencia, porque quieren una hija de uno de ellos para poder seguir con ese sello, digamos, para decirlo así, hembras que reproducen lo que son y siempre, o casi. Dicen que es más fácil hoy en día con el internet poder investigar, mirar y todo. Ellos donde viven en Arizona están a una distancia de las exposiciones. Típicamente tienen que viajar a un mínimo de 6 horas por cualquier dirección que se van para llegar a una exposición. y ellos ponen un límite de 12 horas. Así que para ir a una exposición ellos tienen que dedicarse a esas 12 horas para llegar. Eso complica para conocer personalmente, pero es lo que hacen.
Ok. Paula Inver, bueno, ¿cuáles son sus mejores experiencias en exposiciones?
So Paula Imbert is asking, what were some of your best results or best experiences in dog shows, at dog shows?
Oh. Oh, that's a really good question. Best experiences. I think one, is she looking for specifics, like an actual show, or just in general?
Whatever.
I just have the question, so interpret it as you like, whatever you think you will be.
Okay, so first I would say some of our best experiences when we went in with no expectations at all. And just didn't have any expectations, thought the judge might be good, and we came up with success. You know, sometimes when you go in thinking that you have a really good chance to win, you come out with not as much success. Do you mind getting the plug? It's over there on the table.
Yeah.
But we have some definitely specific memories. One where I think Joey comes to mind, and he was in just a regular all breed show. He was in a 12 to 18 class, and the open class had all colors. You know, sometimes the colors are separated out in classes, but this particular one, it was all colors. So the class was massive, and he won the class, which we were excited about. And then he went breed over about 10 specials on top of that to win best of breed over that, and he got a huge major for that one. It was totally unexpected and very exciting for him and for us, and it was his actual first time ever in group as well, so that was a lot of fun too. And I mean, there's so many. Can you plug that in over there? There's so many stories. We have so many, but another fun one was when we went to a sporting dog specialty in New Mexico, and it was a huge show. It was a really big show, and a lot of breeders came to that particular show. And Joey was a special at that time, and he won best of breed both days, which was unexpected. And then he placed a group 3 in sporting dog and a group 2 in sporting dog the next day, and that launched him up to a high ranking within the breed ranking points and then the all breed ranking points. And then at that point, after that, we started campaigning him. And then I remember, yeah.
I only have one.
Oh, okay.
I have one. You need to help me with the dates.
Oh, okay.
You have another one?
Yeah, one more.
All right, go ahead.
So one more. Again, it has something to do with Joey, and this one was in the, I think it was 2015 Labrador National in California. He was a veteran there, and
He was 8 years old.
And we had such a fun time that weekend. He won best veteran. He won best veteran both days, and under great judges. And then we had him in stud dog class as well. He made the cut both days in the breed, and then he made it to the final cut at nationals and got the first award of merit from under Sue Williamson. And then on top of that, he won best stud dog both days under some really, really good competition in the stud dog competition. But it was also our first opportunity to have Joey as the stud dog, Grizz as his get, and then Jolly as his other get. And it was the first time that all three were in the ring together for both days, competing, you know, with Joey and the Get as well. So those are probably some of our more memorable shows.
Yeah, that's the show. And I wasn't able to attend. Tina went there. I had to stay home with the dogs, and I think we had a litter of puppies. But that show, 2015 Nationals, is the only time in their lives that Jolly and Grizz were in the ring together. And it's the only time all three of them were ever in the show together. So that day we had Joey and then half brothers, Grizz and Jolly, in the ring together. And that's I wasn't able to be there, but that's still my favorite show.
Bueno, voy a contar 3 experiencias de los cuales tienen muy lindos recuerdos. Todos tienen que ver con su perro Joey. Dicen que hay muchos recuerdos, pero esos 3 se recuerdan con un cariño muy especial. El primero era cuando Joey compitió en el clase para 12 y 18 meses. Estaba abierto todos los colores juntos, que muchas veces en Estados Unidos se separan por colores, muchísimos perros, y él ganó su categoría, que ya fue importante porque era una de sus primeras exposiciones, y después él ganó la raza encima de 10 campeones. Eso fueron muchos puntos de sus puntos mayores para hacer su campeonato, un día muy importante. Y eso fue su primera oportunidad de competir en el grupo también. El Sporting Group en Estados Unidos es parecido a lo que nosotros en la FCI tenemos el grupo 7-8. Dice que mucho más recuerdo, pero otro eran un especializado para perros del Sporting Group que se hizo en New Mexico, y en ese momento Joey ya era campeón y así compitió como lo que se llaman specials, que ya son cuando ya son campeones, y él ganó mejor de exposición los 2 días, ganó un tercero de grupo y un segundo de grupo, y eso lo mandó arriba del ranking de la raza y hasta all breeds. Y el tercer recuerdo que tienen es ya en 2015 en la Nacional de Labrador, que ese año lo hicieron en California, y yo ya era veterano. Allá ganó mejor veterano a los 2 días, a los 8 años, y también compitió como en la categoría, pero perros de stud, y ganó también los 2 de esos, y entró los 2 días como en el corte de final de raza, bueno, final de la especializada. Y no lo ganó, pero él fue el primero en recibir lo que se llama un premio de mérito, que según la cantidad de perros se permiten que el juez nombra no solamente el mejor de raza, sino unos más, y él fue el primero en recibir ese premio. En esa exposición, él fue presentado con Grizz y Jolly, que fueron 2 medio hermanos. Es la única vez que los 3 estaban en pista al mismo tiempo, y eso fue muy emotivo. Tino pudo ir, pero lamentablemente Duke se quedó en casa con cachorros, o como nos pasa a todos con una camada joven, y no lo pudo ver, pero sigue en sus recuerdos también como uno de los mejores momentos.
¿Le dan algún suplemento a sus cachorros o solamente alimento balanceado?
Do you give supplements to your puppies or to your dogs, or do you just feed them good quality dog food? What do you do with that?
Yeah, all
Both.
of yes to all.
Yes, we feed them supplements. We feed them really good quality food, and really almost no medication. Our dogs are, as a matter of fact, our veterinarian wants us
Doesn't
to
make
see
any
him
money.
more because we don't see him enough. No. And he says, you used to be one of my best clients. I'm like, I don't want to see you at all. So yes, we feed. You want to tell them the supplements?
Yes,
I'll go get them.
So as far as what we do, we do have a process what we do with our food and our supplements at this point in time. When the baby puppies are young, we feed Pro Plan, and we try to use a food that does not have soy, wheat, or corn in it for the puppies, and Pro Plan does have that. And then we feed the puppies that food as their baby puppies, and then when they're still little puppies and they're like growing to 8 weeks old, we give them a Fortiflora while they're growing. And
sorry, I didn't hear you. I missed that last. I missed what you said.
We give them from the Fortiflora. We give them the Fortiflora. I don't know. Here's a box right here, so you can see the Fortiflora. And that's while they're growing, and we give that to them until they're about 15 months old in their food. Along with that, once they hit around 12 months old, 8 to 12 months old, we switch them off the Pro Plan food, and then we feed Froms, Fromms, Froms, and it's a little bit more holistic type food, and it has more, I should say, cleaner ingredients in the food. And we feed them different types of food, different proteins as well. Each dog does better with a certain type of protein, we have learned. So we learned that. And once they hit about 6 months old, we give them a supplement called Phytoflex. And do you want me to spell that?
Phytoflex, I think I got that, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so we give them Phytoflex, and it's a really good organic supplement that is good for their muscles and bones and nutrition. Nowadays, with the way people are breeding, they're breeding heavier bone dogs, and sometimes they grow a little faster too. These two supplements really help them with growing. So you can try to help prevent any type of dysplasia or joint issues as well. And we can use that supplement up until they get, into their senior years, the Phytoflex. And she said she had it.
Yep.
One of the things to expand on the food is we've learned that certain types of food impact chocolate coat. And so for those of you who are breeding chocolates, we have really learned that we have done a lot of testing, a lot of different types of feeding, and we have learned certain types of food impact the color of coat on the Labrador and on the chocolate Labrador. And that's why we have chosen Froms, because it seems to help maintain a darker coat. Now, along with that, genetics does play a role in the color of the chocolate coat, but also food also makes an impact as well. And we know that for sure.
Okay, bueno, sí, sí a suplementos, sí a un alimento de buena calidad, casi nada de medicamentos. Dicen que su veterinario reclama que no lo visitan suficiente. Ellos dicen que no quieren ir más de lo necesario. Su perro realmente tiene una vida saludable. Cuando los cachorros son bebé, les empieza con el alimento de Pro Plan para bebé. Ellos no quieren a esa edad que el alimento tiene ni soja, ni trigo, ni maíz. Y Pro Plan tiene un alimento que cumple con esos requisitos. agregan, cuando son un poco más grandes, Fortiflora que Tina mostró en la pantalla, Fortiflora que ayuda en crecimiento hasta los 15 meses. Eso se mezcla en el alimento. Y cerca de los 8-12 meses pasan un alimento que se llama Froms, que es un poco más holístico en su manera de funcionar, que los ingredientes son más limpios y buscan distintas proteínas para distintos perros. Dicen que los perros responden de manera distinta a distintas proteínas. A veces tienen que agregar eso para distintos perros. A los 6 meses agregan un suplemento orgánico que ayuda con músculos, huesos y para buena nutrición, que se llama Phytoflex. Y Phytoflex ayuda mucho, que hoy en día la gente está cada vez con perros más pesados y en crecimiento es importante evitar problemas de articulaciones, y ese Phytoflex, como lo ves ahí, se puede usar hasta que los perros son, digamos, mayores. Lo que han aprendido mucho es que ciertos alimentos afectan el color en labradores chocolate, en el color de manto. Eso va en parte con la genética del mismo perro y en parte del alimento. Yo le voy a preguntar si me pueden definir un poco más sobre eso que debe estar. So I was just going to ask you if you could expand, if you figured out which type of food in particular, or whether it's a brand or whether it's a food type that affects or makes chocolate coats look redder. What is it that you discovered?
It seems to be beef, isn't it?
No. I mean, there are certain types of brands of food that we believe affect a chocolate coat to be more red. I'll be honest, we feel a little uncomfortable putting a brand out there.
Okay.
We do know that we do know people who are salespeople, for those brands, and I don't want to.
I can tell you a protein though.
Would throw those people, just kind of be negative. If someone wants to ask us, if someone wants to ask us, you could tell them they could message us, and we'd be happy to tell them maybe what food to stay away from versus put it out publicly.
Right.
Yeah. Are you okay with that?
I just wondered if it was, I don't know, something like a particular, as you say, protein or meat type or I don't know, grain type.
Actually, we have seen with our dogs, any food that has pork in it consistently that dog tends to have a lighter coat. And we would find out about it accidentally. Just as the puppies would grow, we would see a change in coat, and it always coincided with a change in food. And over time, we realized pork was one of the proteins that either some of our dogs didn't agree with, or the dogs eating it had a redder shine to their coat. And since removing pork, it seemed to have changed.
Okay. Bueno,
that's our experience.
Dicen que sí hay algunas marcas que tienen esa tendencia de llevar el pelaje a rojo. Si alguien quiere mandarle un mensaje por privado, ellos lo contestan directamente, y que como proteína se han notado, y lo notaron al principio por casualidad, que los alimentos que tienen carne porcina adentro son lo que en los casos de sus líneas han llevado al manto a ser más rojizo, más claro y más rojizo.
Jennifer, le voy a hacer la última pregunta, ya estamos pasada la 1:30.
Sí.
Y si queda, seguramente alguna pregunta queda, si ellos quieren luego, una vez finalizada, contestarla sin ningún problema. Te paso la última pregunta.
Sí.
Bueno, Víctor Fabini pregunta, bueno, como criadores de labradores chocolates, ¿están de acuerdo que para mejorar el manto, ojos, etcétera, hay que incorporar en los cruces labradores negros o es un mito? Por experiencia personal, creo que se pueden producir perros de calidad sin ir al color negro.
So we have a question from, we've gone past an hour and a half now, so it's been a very rich talk. Thank you. So we have the last question here for tonight, and obviously, if you look in the chat of the video afterwards, and you see more, or people want to write to you directly, if you're comfortable, please offer and please answer the questions. And the last question we have comes from Victor Favini, who's a breeder of chocolates in Argentina. He asks if, in your experience, in order to improve the color of coat and nose and eyes of chocolate Labradors, if it's important to cross with blacks, or if, as he thinks in his own experience, you can just stay within chocolates and develop that.
You can stay within chocolates, I believe, because there are some wonderful bloodlines out there with correct coat color, correct eye color, all of that. So yes, it certainly is possible to stay within chocolates and have success. Our experience is the blacks tend to give us more what we're looking for, but in the last 10 years, the chocolates have gotten much better. And there's a lot of nice chocolates out there, and especially chocolate females, that I think are going to give a lot to chocolates going forward. So,
to add to that, I do believe, I think Duke and I both believe that breeding black into your chocolate line, because black is the foundation color of the black Labrador, of the Labrador, it will improve overall a lot of the build and the type of the dog. So bone, type, color, and just basic eye color, etc. Now, is it breeding to black going to change the color of the coat? No, it's just going to overall improve the quality of the chocolate bloodline when you breed to black. And so there should be a point in time when you're breeding chocolate to chocolate, you should diverse and maybe breed to black and then bring that into the line and then breed back to your chocolate lines that you like. It just kind of helps create a stronger foundation into your chocolate bloodline.
There were years when we would be in the show ring and we would have the only chocolate labs in the show, so there were years when that happened. So we kind of began breeding that way, honestly, but there are a lot of nice chocolates out there now.
Okay.
And then, also to add, last thing to add is we know in the ring, when you have a really nice chocolate and that the quality of that chocolate is very nice, the structure of that dog is really nice, but your chocolate Labrador has to be that much better than the black almost every time when you're in the show ring. So that's what pushes us to constantly improve our chocolate bloodline. And it's just the base of competition as well.
Bueno, una contestación bastante amplia para Víctor, me parece. Bueno, lo que tú dices es que sin duda hoy en día podés quedar adentro de chocolates. Existen líneas con todo lo que necesitas de color, de manto y de piel. No hace falta salir de eso. Pero los negros te puede dar más, no en términos de color, sino como negro es el color original de los labradores, tenés la oportunidad de elegir perros negros que te puedan ayudar a mejorar la tipicidad, el hueso, aparte del color del perro. los chocolates han mejorado mucho en los últimos 10 años, que le da más oportunidades, pero ellos creen que Tina y Duke están convencidos que es importante diversificar en ciertos momentos, buscar líneas de perros negros y volver a integrarlo con los líneas chocolates que ya tienen. Ellos por años tuvieron muchas veces el único chocolate presentado en las exposiciones, y ellos dicen que saben que un chocolate compitiendo no alcanza, que es exactamente de la misma calidad que un negro, tiene que ser aún mejor que un negro para ganar. Entonces eso es lo que les empujan tanto en su búsqueda de mejorar sus líneas.
Bueno, Jennifer, agradecerle a Tina y Duke el tiempo, la predisposición. Estamos en 1:45 de charla. Hacerle llegar extensivamente los saludos tanto mío como del resto de la comisión directiva. El agradecimiento siempre a vos, Jennifer, por estar en este ciclo de charlas. Y bueno, nada, cualquier cosa nos vemos en la próxima.
Okay. Y le voy a agregar que bueno, por favor, ellos están dispuestos, que si alguien quiere escribirlo con más preguntas, que están dispuestos a contestar.
Sí, claro.
Tina and Duke, thank you so much for being so generous with us and for participating in this series of talks that the Labrador Retriever Club of Argentina has organized. I hope you found it as enriching as we have. And the Labrador Retriever Club's Commission would like to, from Marcelo, who you have here with us, and from everyone else behind the scenes, like to thank you so much and for participating.
Thank you. It was our pleasure.
Thank you. It was an honor to be invited.
Yep. Thank you.
And we do want to, extend out if someone wants to message us on Facebook or friend us so we can actually answer any questions. And then also they can email us at info@quailchaselabradors.com if they want to ask us questions that we were unable to answer for them. But we are very honored, and thank you so much for the invitation.
It was fun.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Marcelo. Ellos son muy agradecidos de haber sido invitados, que fue un honor, y quieren extender la invitación a todos que están escuchando. Si tienen más preguntas, que le mandan un mensaje en Facebook, que se le mandan un pedido a ser amigos, o que si les envíen un mail a info@quailchase.com. Quail Chase, como se escribe en la invitación del Club de Labradores, se puede encontrarlo ahí. Así que ellos están dispuestos a contestar cualquier pregunta que no han llegado a poder contestar ahora, o lo que ocurre, lo que sea. Así que, bueno, muchísimas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Chao, chao.
Thank you very much, and
Thank
bye
you.
for now.
Chao,
Bye.
chao.